What's up YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. We're going to continue with the Cash Game World Championship. Now I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be changing the format a bit of how this is done. So up until this point I have been looking at hands in the replays, mostly for the first time. So these replays come from Card Player Railbirds, and I've mostly been looking at them for the first time before even sharing my thoughts on them, and then after I see the hand, I'll then do some analysis, you know, with a solver or GTOwizard, and then I'll sort of explain what's going on using GTOwizard from a more theoretical perspective. But I found that that takes a bit too much time. I have to explain my own thought process first, and then I almost have to repeat the thought process a lot of times, because a lot of times it's just kind of confirming what I said. So I have to go through the hand twice almost, it feels, and therefore going through the hands takes almost twice as much time as they need to, I feel like, at least in video format. So what I'm going to start doing from now is, instead, I'm going to look at the hands myself before recording the footage, and then I'll just share the findings basically. So you're probably going to end up hearing less about my own personal opinions and thoughts on how the hand should be played, but more on how, like, theoretically the hand should be played from a more objective point of view. Obviously, I hope my explanations can be quite good. The other thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to stop looking at multi-way hands, and the only reason for that is because I can't really check multi-way hands in GTOwizard. And the reason I want to do this is because I want to make the videos a bit shorter, because I think we can get through an equal amount of hands or even more hands, whilst at the same time making the video shorter, if I try to focus mainly on doing some work before I actually record the footage and analyzing, and then just getting right to the point in the GTOwizard solver. And that being said, if you do enjoy this type of content, and if you've been watching the series and if you want more of it, give me some encouragement, guys. Hit that like and subscribe button. I do want this channel to keep growing. Also, I'd just like to let you guys know that I joined GTOwizard as an affiliate, and so now I'm officially a partner, and therefore I get to give away 1 month free to someone watching this video. We're doing a giveaway right here, right now. So if you want 1 month free of GTOwizard for PLO, let me know, guys. Comment in the comments down below, GTO, write down GTO, and you'll be enrolled into the giveaway. With all that being said, let's get into the video. In this hand, we're going to have Tess open with 10-7-6-4. Stefan's going to call with King 8-7-4. I don't think this is the real Stefan. Anyways, Mahasajan is going to 3-bet with Ace-Ace 3-5. Now, these guys are, like, really deep. Mahasajan and Tess are 150 big blinds deep, or 160 big blinds deep, while Stefan is, like, almost 200 big blinds deep with Tess. So actually in this hand, 10-7-6-4 is going to be an open indeed. Cutoff is 200 big blinds deep. He's got King 8-7-4, is that right? King 8-7-4? Double, yeah. This does have to fold, even in this rake environment. Then Mahasajan has aces. So ace-ace 4-3. Yeah, it just has to 3-bet unless you're like Rainbow. It's quite rare that you're going to be just flatting aces here, unless you have some really weak ones. Even in this rake structure, and even being 200 big blinds deep, we still want to just squeeze most of our aces at this point. And so that's what happens. Now, Tess, it gets back to him, and he's going to have a call, although we do see a bit of like reshoving here with the weak suit combo specifically. So, you know, this is actually what happens in game. Tess does decide to reshove his hand, and then Stefan decides to go with it, which at this point, well, he shouldn't have his hand in the range. so maybe we could look at that. But I would honestly fold again, to be honest. I think it's quite a disconnected hand. Yeah, we see that even if it's not in his range, he should still be folding this hand again. That being said, when it does get back to Mahasajan, I'm guessing that he does get to reshove his hand. Yeah, like 95% of aces just get the money in. So basically all of them. And this ends up being a three-way all-in pre-flop somehow. And we see Tess ends up winning and scooping a huge pot here. If we look at the pre-flop equities, so it looks like Mahasajan should be winning the pot about half the time, which is really huge for him and great situation for him to be in. The other two are kind of flipping between themselves. And, you know, we've seen Tess make some pretty loose plays pre-flop already, but it works out for him this time. Okay, so over here we've got Mahasajan, who's going to open with 8-8-7-5 double suited, and then LMF has 142 big blinds, and he's going to be 3-betting with ace-ace 10-3 single, and Mahasajan is going to put in the call. So I think up until this point everything has been quite standard. So 8-8-7-5 is going to be an open, ace-ace 10-3 is going to be a 3-bet, and then the hijack is going to call again with 8-8-7-5. There's no real other ways to play these hands pre-flop. Now, on the flop, Mahasajan does actually get a donking range, and I just wanted to show you this because it included 3 sizings, but I just wanted to show that the predominant size that Mahasajan does want to use is going to be B50, and he has to balance that range quite carefully. Definitely not able to just bet all of your full houses and trips and then just check your bluffs. Like, you need to have a pretty well-balanced range here, bluffing quite a few pairs and even some like naked draws without a pair sometimes. Anyways, with this hand, this is not what Mahasajan decides to do. LMF 42 is going to put in a C-bet here. It's quite large. It's almost like half pot actually. And Mahasajan is going to go for a very small raise, just above a click pretty much. And LMF 42 opts to just reshove pretty much and commit his stack in. And they are going to run it. LMF 42 is going to need a 10 ace or 3, and he misses. So let's check this hand out. Looking at sizings, I also wanted to show that in position C-bet size was quite not so good. Like, as we see here, I only included small sizings, and there's no point of including half pot here or B40 or something, because clearly solver wants to size really, really low, and in this exact situation it would prefer to use 20% bet size on the flop. When that happens, so let's say, let's just make the sizings GTO for now. So let's say that out position checks, in position goes B20, then the optimal check raise sizing would actually be slightly larger. As we see, it would be like half pot check raise. However, I also have a sim here showing what actually happened. So I didn't change anything for Mahasajan. I just kept his out position donk the same, since I don't know what his donking strategy looks like. But I made in position use a much larger sizing, and his C-bet frequency now goes down quite significantly. It goes from 60%, 63%, all the way down to 38%. And out of position's check raise strategy now becomes basically to click back, as we see. So Mahasajan ended up playing well. So what we see here is that our check raise sizing is very elastic, and it's going to depend a lot on how big the in position player decides to c-bet in this situation. So if in position decides to c-bet large, we still can have a check raising range. It's just we're going to significantly lower like the pot odds. The exact sizing doesn't actually change that much because, you know, if you raise 50 against a tiny bet, you end up raising to 24, and over here, if you click, you end up raising to like 25, 24 again, 26. And so the actual sizing doesn't actually change, it just, in terms of the odds we're giving opponent, that does change. But I just thought that was pretty cool to show how our check raise sizings change according to the other player's strategy. Now, that being said, we can look at Mahasajan's option to donk on the flop. And he does actually like to donk around half the time with his full houses. So we can take a look at this, and it seems like in general you want to actually be blocking hands you expect him to bluff. So stuff like the ace of clubs is going to be checking more because like you want him to continue with the ace of clubs, and then let's say he has like RROO and no jack, no queen, no 9, no 7, no 6, and now we end up, and no king. And now we end up having like, the 6 isn't that important. But basically now we end up having like a lot of unblockers to his c-betting range, and therefore these hands would prefer to go ahead and check, basically. But his exact hand was 8-8-7-5, and this is going to be somewhat mixed because you are unblocking his calls somewhat, unblocking the high straight draws, unblocking the flush draws, but at the same time the 7 is still somewhat relevant, and the 5 as well in a way, because these are hands that might be more prevalent in Button's 3-betting range, which he might be using as a c-bet bluff, for example. Now, in position should be checking a ton here, and that means he does need to start checking some trips, but trips are going to be a high frequency bet, like not quite as high as full houses, but they're still mainly going to be bet. And so when you want to consider checking trips, you generally want to block less of stuff close to the board. So, and you want to have higher kickers. So an ace will be betting a lot more frequently. Also stuff like a 2 is going to be betting almost pure. He had like ace, ace 3, and so that's going to be betting pretty much pure, even when you size up. And then you'd rather prefer checking back when you have stuff like 2 clubs. Well, that actually didn't make a difference. But let's say you have stuff like Jack 9. Now you have the straight draws, and you're wrapping around the 10, and therefore you're not really as worried about seeing turns. And if you get check raised, you tend to end up running into maybe full houses or higher trips too often for us to make us want to bet combos such as that. So anyways, he did go for the c-bet, which is good, and Mahasajan did go for the click check raise, which is also good. Yeah, just to show you that pretty much 100% of full houses should be check raised, and using the sizing scheme, most of your trips should also be check raised. It's actually quite funny because when in position sizes up to be 50, it encourages out of position to just check raise with trips and like almost just take the pot down because there's a lot of dead money in the pot now. We're happy to just take the pot down. And it almost forces the out of position player to sort of almost play a raise or fold strategy. Whereas when you're using a small betting strategy, I'm just gonna make this less confusing and give the 50 only, or raise for 50 only. So when in position uses a small c-bet strategy, out of position has to like call quite a bit now and see a lot more turns basically by check calling, which can make things more uncomfortable for out of position. And therefore out of position has to end up calling more than half of his trips, which isn't going to be the situation over here. Regardless, like full houses are a hand category that pretty much always want to check raise regardless of what sizing in position is going to use. Yeah, that being said, against the check raise, I also looked at what size in position wants to use, and pretty much everything is fine. It does slightly prefer to use a small sizing. Like it does prefer to, let's say, click it back at the stacked up. So this could just be a case of LMF 42, just fast playing and overplaying his hand, because, you know, he's basically saying what he has. He's got ace 10, he wants to get the money in and not see turns because there's a lot of turns that change the board, and he feels uncomfortable playing turns and rivers. Therefore he'd rather just reshove and he'd rather size up on the flop. But in reality, GTO wants to play turns and rivers and wants to be put into awkward situations. And, you know, the funny thing is, ace, 10, 3 is actually mostly going to be a call, especially with one club, which is what LMF actually had. So over here, LMF should be playing, just be calling and be playing a lot of turns. But again, he decides to shove, so it just shows that check raising and then barreling, like LMF is going to have a very, very weak calling range, most likely, because he just appeared to over fast play in this spot too much. But, you know, you have trips with the top kicker. It's the easy play to just click shove here. It is the easy play, so I can't really blame him for that. Mahasajan obviously can't fold with a full house, but well played by Mahasajan, and LMF was fast playing too much, I think. In this hand, we got Action Brunson, who's going to be opening 100 big blinds deep under the gun with Queen 10, 8, 5. Zagas, who was, I think, the player who put in the most volume and highly regarded as one of the toughest players to play against, he 3-bets with ace king 4, 5 double suited. It comes back to Action Brunson, and he's going to be calling. So pre-flop, everything seems, well, I mean, it's not actually that good for the undergun player. He should just be folding at the stacked up, pretty much. That being said, ace king 4, 5 is a very standard 3-bet, and when it comes back to the under the gun player, now he never has Queen 10, 8, 5 in his range, but given it's double suited, I don't think you're going to be folding that. Board comes quite low. It's going to be 7, 6, 3 rainbow, and you can just look at the flop action. Under the gun is going to check to the cutoff, who is electing to bet for a small sizing on the flop, and Action Brunson's going to check call. So on the flop, out of position should in fact have a donking range. If you're using standard sizings, B50 should be the size here. But like, it's not much donking. It's quite different from a flop such as 9, 8, 5, for example, or the higher we go, we can even just make the 5 a 6, and it goes even above 50% of the time. So, you know, even over here, I think if we just make the 3 or 4, it's gonna go up from 20% up to 29%. So all these factors make us want to donk more. So this is one of the low boards, the straight flops, where out of position doesn't get to do like a ton of donking, let's say. And there is a bit of donking when you have naked open-enders. It's mainly going to be consisting of wraps, but yeah, open-enders do get to do it, but you want to have 2 backdoor flush draws if you have an open-ender. If you don't have 2 backdoor flush draws, then in general these hands are just going to be checking in order to check call. Now I was looking at this to see what sizing in position likes to use as a c-bet, and as we see, in position can opt to use pretty much anything he wants. So this is very dependent on how the in position decides to create his strategy here. Zages did decide to go for 1/3 pot, so I opened a new tab to just use 1/3 pot here, and he actually flopped the straight, so he's not going to have it too often, but when you do flop a straight, and you know, even if out of position doesn't donk, I think you'd still be betting your straights here, considering that there's not that much of a donking frequency at all. Looking at in positions play, I included 2 bet or 2 raise sizes here, and it does want to just check raise for a large sizing because neither player really has straights. So if you're going to be check raising, it's for the value region would be 2 pair plus basically, and all of our 2 pair does want to get the money in, whereas it would rather slow play, especially with top set and middle set, blocking most of in positions bet calls, whereas straights unblocking a lot of stuff can definitely go for the check raise. That being said, if you just have a pure straight draw and it's not going to be the nut wrap, then those are simply just pretty easy calls. On the turn, Action Brunson does decide to go for the donk, and Action Brunson did go for a 1/3 size donk. He can size up to B50, but it's probably not a huge mistake to go B33. So I'm just going to make him go B33. So we see him go for B33 as a donk. Zages is going to flat, and Action Brunson's going to jam, and Zages is going to call the river against the jam. So looking at turn donk after we changed it to B33, we see that the donks are very much centered around around the nut straight actually, and so out of position has very few 2 pairs because those are mainly going to be check raising on the flop. So most of the 2 pairs will now have a 2 pair with a 9, and these aren't super incentivized to be betting because again they block in positions calling range. So in general, like if you have 2 pairs with a 9, you actually don't want to have the straight draw. And the sets, again, they check call the flop, but for the same reason they're going to be check calling the turn, mainly because we want in position to keep bluffing, and if we donk, we block like a lot of in positions calling range. So the value is really, really centered around the nut straight at this point, actually, even though we're sizing down. And, you know, we're betting 1/3 of our range as a donk here. Our bluffs are going to mainly be coming from pairs with a straight draw mainly, and our naked straight draws are just going to go for a check. It's actually quite hard for us to have air at this point after check calling the flop. So the under the gun player did go for the donk, and I gave in position a few raise sizings, but it likes to just pot raise. But in fact, it almost doesn't want to even raise at all, and it's never raising with a straight. It's never even raising with a set. So its raises are mainly coming from like top 2 pair, and it's just very, very rare to actually be doing this. You want a straight draw with your top 2 pair. Just kind of, top 2 pair is exactly the type of hand that wants to end the hand now, whereas our straights, we're going to be able to call and call again almost every river, and then a lot of these pairs can improve on rivers and stuff. So out of position's repping very polar on this turn, and so we are going to be slow playing our 5-4 pure, as we see. It was the king of spades on the river. So yeah, out of position is going to be jamming a ton here. Basically all of his straights want to be jamming, and pretty easy strategy for out of position. He does get to do a bit of block betting if he has a 2 pair, for example, but even his sets mainly want to be jamming, it looks like. Maybe not river top set, because that's blocking a lot of the calling range, but weaker sets in general want to be jamming. And against the jam, the straights never fold, the sets never fold, 2 pairs with a king never fold, and then you can start to fold your weaker 2 pairs. And you do even have to call some 1 pair combos that have a straight blocker, but overall, I think this was a well-played hand. I didn't actually look if out of position should be donking his hand, but he doesn't really have this exact combo in his range. So I guess if you want to start checking your nut straight here, you generally want to have a king. Pocket 8s might want to be checking more, and then some random jack-jack combos. But when you're unblocking in positions calling range, the nut straight does generally want to be going for a bet in this situation. So other than pre-flop, I would say both players played extremely well here. In this next hand, we are going to have a very deep stacked hand. We got Rockies with ace queen jack 9. He's going to open under the gun. Very standard open. Now tight as right is going to end up 3-betting. They're 300 big blinds deep, by the way. With ace king 10 9 spades, he is going to be 3-betting. So looking at pre-flop, we don't need to look at under the gun's play. But ace king 10 9, being so deep, we do only actually want to be 3-betting with the double suited combo. So our 3-betting ranges do really tighten up here. Anyways, as played, ace queen jack 9 obviously not going to be folding, and they get to this flop, which is quite interesting. It's a low rainbow flop once again. Tight as right is going to check, and Rockies is going to take a stab for half pot. Now I did look at the strategies a bit, and it does appear that actually out of position does in fact want to use a tiny bet size on the flop. And if he uses the tiny bet size, then in fact he does get to bet quite a bit. However, even if he uses the tiny bet size, like he's only going to be betting a more polarized range, let's say, and not open-ended straight draws are one particular hand class that always wants to check because it can easily check call. Now that being said, a lot of people probably won't be using the tiny bet size. Let's say maybe they size up to half pot or something. In this situation, you don't get to c-bet nearly as much, especially if we make in positions raise size smaller. Let's make it b40 in this situation. Now out of position gets to c-bet even less, and we can argue for like pretty much a pure checking range on this type of flop. So I don't really blame out of position for like checking here. Also in the previous sim I just showed you, I did not factor in that in position would lower his raise sizing. So again, even if you use a tiny bet size, it probably wouldn't have c-bet so much if we allow in position a smaller raise sizing. So out of position does decide to check, and then when I looked at in position strategy, I also found that in position wants to use yeah, half pot looks fine. In position could even size up all the way to B75 if he wants, it looks like. But at that point it starts to get kind of big. So in position decides to just go B50, and looking at ace queen jack 9, it does mainly want to be stabbing. So in position has the backdoor hearts here. So we see ace queen jack 9 combos mainly going to be checking with clubs, and if you have like a backdoor flush draw, you are mainly going to be betting those combos. So seems quite fine to be betting. So out of position check calls. I believe that's the only way to play his hand. Yeah, not open-enders never want to check raise. Although once again, we could make him use a smaller sizing. Maybe that would be a thing, but let's ignore that for this video. Okay, so in position is gonna be 80 on the turn. And on the river, he hits the nuts, so he's just going for it. Tight as right has top 2 pair with a 9. Very hard hand to be folding, but let's check this out and solve a land. So on the turn, small blind did check call with ace king 10 9 on the flop, and on the turn the king comes, but out of position doesn't get to donk on this turn. Anyways, in position wants to use, yeah, a pretty polarized strategy. We see a lot of mixing between B70 and pot. Therefore, you know, using an 80% sizing on the turn, like Rockies did, is going to be a good option here. And so I'm gonna just leave what the players actually used in this situation. And we see that his range is like basically pure betting with straights and pure betting with top set. And then other sets are still mostly going to be betting as well. As for top 2 pair, it's mainly going to be betting with a flush draw, and yeah, it looks like other 2 pair combos are going to also mostly be betting centered around having a flush draw. And then obviously you're going to have some bluffs. And so Hero did have ace queen jack 9 with hearts here, and with the nut flush draw we have a lot of equity, so this is a combo that we can go ahead and bet. Out of position has ace king 10 9, which is just going to play as a check call, unless you have the weak flush draw. Actually, if you have a 10 high flush draw, this now becomes a good hand to be check raise bluffing, because you're actually gonna you know, force hands like ace queen jack 9 into a tough spot. I do believe ace queen jack 9 is a bet fold, and that's a good result if you have a hand such as ace king 10 9 with 10 high clubs in this situation. But ace king 10 9 without the 10 high clubs, we're going to be check calling. And the river brought 10 of clubs. I meant 10 high hearts for out of position, by the way. So once again, out of position doesn't get a donking range, even though the straight completes. And this is because in position still gets to barrel with his top sets. So in position gets to barrel with his pocket kings, and he gets to have like lots of bluffs also. Notice how even top pair, like if in position has naked top pair, that combo should pretty much be a pure bluff, blocking lots of hero calls from out of position. And out of position is gonna have a lot of like 2 pairs basically, and over pairs. Whereas the straights, like in position, has double the amount of straights than out of position. Although the nut straight is in fact in the out positions range, but more often than under the guns, but that doesn't really matter too much here because, like, in position, still value betting all weaker straights and top sets and should find enough bluffs, although I guess bluffing with a king is slightly unintuitive for a lot of people, but in this spot it makes a lot of sense because you're trying, like, it's pretty hard for out position to have worse than a king, to be honest. Basically, yeah, pretty much 95% of his range is going to be better than a king in this situation. Now, out of position had a straight, under the gun had a straight, therefore he's going to be potting, and unfortunately, you know, ace king 10-9, it's a combo that sort of has to call, although it is very close, as we see. So you change some things, just a few things, and this exact combo can be finding some folds. But in these spots, when you have like top two pair, it's hard to fold, especially when you have the most important straight blocker here, which is like a 9. Yeah, a 6 is going to be a pure call. Don't have that too much. And the jack is the least important, so you could be folding like ace, king, jack 10, for example, would probably be, let's see, I think, yeah, it's still calling, but it's even more close. But yeah, all of these two-pair combos, they're really going to be quite close. And notice how even our sets do have to be folding sometimes. So, you know, straight blocker in this situation is going to be very important to be calling. Because even though Undergun is jamming some sets, he's not like jamming all his sets. He's jamming mainly just his top set. And therefore, the main composition of in positions value range are still going to be straights. That's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it. I'll see you guys next time. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Peace.